Welcome, everybody. It's 6:05, and I'm calling this meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. Mark, welcome back. Would you like to lead us?
Sure. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. We have a nice full house tonight. We've got students from Glacier here taking notes. Is that right? We've got a bunch of members of the public. Let's see. First order of business, we've got the approval of minutes. We've got a few of these to go through. Has everybody had an opportunity to look through all of them? I know a couple of them, we didn't have everybody there. We had a few of us. Anybody? Do you have any corrections, Sue?
Heather, on the March 12th meeting, which was the meeting I was absent for, there is one of the comments that said, Sue said this, but I wasn't there.
Okay.
So I have no idea who said it, but.
We'll note that correction.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sue.
I agree with Lance.
Was it a good comment?
So whatever it was.
One at a time.
Okay. Okay, so we'll note that correction for the second one. We'll have,
Also on the second one, when they were talking about assistant superintendent position, there's a bunch of bulletin points, and at least one of them I was there and I didn't understand what it was about. We've never talked about this before. We were never bringing this up before Matt got the superintendent job. I didn't understand what that was in reference to, or made no sense to me.
It was, I would say it was about not having to assistant superintendent. That could be put in there. We had never talked about not having to assist superintendent before Matt got the superintendent job.
it was vacant.
Yeah, until it was vacant.
Anything else? Seeing none? Anybody willing to make a motion? We'll go through all three of these separately.
I move that we approve the minutes from March 11th.
Second? Yes. Thank you, Jennifer. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this? Is the first approval of minutes. Seeing none, any public comment on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next approval of minutes, March 12th, with those corrections added. Anybody willing to make a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ursula. Thank you, Sue. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Actually,
None,
Heather, on the
any-
last one, is it okay for Jennifer to move when she wasn't at that meeting? Can she approve minutes she wasn't at? I don't know the answer. I just wasn't sure.
I think so. Yeah, it's okay. We're on the second one. No further discussion. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Third approval of minutes is for March 18th. Any corrections? No? Anybody willing to make a motion?
I'll do it again. We'll do it faster. I move to approve the March 18th minutes.
Thank you, Ursula.
I'll second again.
Thank you, Sue. So moved and seconded. Any further discussion? None. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, board chair updates. First of all, honestly, thank you all for understanding earlier. Again, legally, we can't make anybody leave. It's a public meeting, and we do welcome all of you to be here. When it comes to private matters, again, there are times when we are just like the rest of you. We are public servants, we are volunteers, and we do have lives, and things come up from time to time, and I just really appreciate you respecting that privacy. Last night, we had the Kalispell Education Foundation grant reception. We had 4 groups of teachers that were there talking about their grants and how they were using the funding that they received, and I'm always blown away by our staff and how amazing they are, and these staff members thinking outside the box and going out for these grants and just the stories that they're telling of the way they're changing the lives of our students. They are amazing, and honestly, some of these teachers, I felt like our students are changing their lives as well. So it was pretty special to see. Today we had a school visit at Russell. It was great. Scott and I were there, and Matt, and we got to check in on a few classes. It was a little bit different this time. Every classroom we walked in, we had either 2 or 1 class or 4 students. They all stepped up and greeted us with a handshake and a smile and introduced themselves, and they took over the entire tour. We did not speak to the teachers. The teachers stayed at their station working with their small group, and these students, I mean, we're talking pre-K to 4th and 5th graders, leading us on the entire tour, taking us on their PCBE journey and showing us, they took the initiative to show us their different stations, how they're tracking their own learning and their progress, and it was pretty special. It was pretty neat to watch. Russell, really, they did a great job, and they need to keep up with the good work. So that's my only update. And next, let's hear from our students. I've got Flathead Taylor. Are you here? Welcome.
Test. Hi. I am Taylor Pouton. I am Flathead High School's current student body secretary, and I'll be giving the update for Flathead High School today. So first up, we just got finished with prom, and like always, it was a big blast. We had just under about 500 students attending, and we even had a couple who came in a helicopter.
Oh.
So that was pretty cool.
Wow.
And then tomorrow is another busy day for us. We have the ACT for all of our juniors, which is our state testing. And all of our other grades, besides juniors, due to it being online, is going to have an optional makeup day, which I know as a senior, we're very much appreciative of right now. And so we wanted to thank you very much for approving that. Additionally, we have our spring blood drive coming up again. And so the Student Council will be having this on April 11th this week. Students who are 16 or older are able to donate blood, and if you are 18, you can do so without parental permission. And then finally, we have Earth Day and neighborhood cleanup coming, and so Student Council is going to be going around and sponsoring a cleanup day on April 22nd. We're having a pretty calm month in general, but we are having IB testing as well, starting soon on April 25th. And so everyone's kind of gearing up for that and graduation in the coming months. Thank you.
One question.
Yes.
For your cleanup day, is that just student council, or are you requesting other students to come participate? How is that working?
As of the moment, it is just student council because it would be hard to get more and more students approved. However, if other students saw interest, we would definitely branch out and allow them as long as they're within their academic requirements.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions for me? Perfect. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Taylor. Hey, Glacier, Mark? Mark not here? Nope. Hey.
You might still be at the track meet.
Oh, that's true.
I'm not sure if it's done or not.
Okay,
It was competing today.
okay. All right, moving on. Budget and levy report.
All right, so I'm going to give you guys an abbreviated version of what I've been able to share with our staff. So we've gone through many of these reports with you guys at the board level, and the next point of contact was really just sitting down with our staff and working through this. We've met separately with the LROD staff just because that crew had come up with the long-range facility planning. It's also come up in a couple of board discussions. So I met with that group independently, and then was able to meet with the Flathead High staff, Glacier staff, KMS staff, and then tomorrow I'm meeting with all of the other elementary schools. I'm going to give you an abbreviated version of what I've shared with those groups, just so we're all on the same page of what's being shared and communicated. We've covered these topics. And I know you guys have seen this before, but this has been important to share with the staff with the process. You know, this process started with getting together some groups of teachers, some administrators, some folks from the union, and then we sat down and established some norms, what we'd be going through. And when we talk about the impacts negative budgets have, it's important to focus on the word least. And what we're trying to do is navigate least impactful changes. They didn't time this right. This is supposed to come up with the tech levy conversation. We shared with the staff the different areas that impact the budget to broaden the perspective of what we're talking about when we're talking about impacts. I know the board has dug deep into these issues, but it's been nice to communicate with the staff that, you know, there are many things impacting our budget, and when you start talking about the small impacts with budget clarity and budget development process, but then the bigger dollar amounts that are associated with our facilities and how our facilities are connected to student ratios, and then also just the communications plan and how a broader communications plan is something we're going to pursue because it's the right thing to do, but it also gives us a better vehicle in the future to drive to communicate levies. Again, we're not doing it to pass levies, but we're doing it to share the amazing things that are happening in our schools every day. The conversation when we zoom out and we start looking at a comparison between all the AA's has been pretty revealing when you start talking to the staff, and so they get this broader perspective. I think it's been appreciated that where we stand as a district. This graph really tells a story. The blue, remember, is the elementary district, the green is the high school district, and then the blue is where we combine and share funds. You can see on the elementary side, and this has been, you know, hard to communicate and challenging to hear, challenging to say for sure, but when we get in the numbers, we're $1.5 million over budget on the elementary side, and then when we dig into the data, we're actually overstaffed in comparison to other AA's per student. And so this graph levels the number of students. It just talks about funding on a per student basis and where districts are allocating their money. On the high school side, you'll see that it's the reverse of that, but that's more closely tied because we have a 90% funding with the levy situation. And then the blue is really where our district in the past has pulled money from to make sure that we can maintain programs. So if you're 90% funded on the high school side and you want to continue the programs you're doing, you're pulling money from somewhere. And so we've been pulling from maintenance and facilities. We've been pulling from the other administrative offices. And then on the elementary side, you know, when we're overfunded or when we're overstaffed, we've been doing the same thing to make those budgets work. We've taken an internal look then at the elementary side and then the high school side. On the elementary side, or actually on both sides, go to the next one. And this is where LROD, you know, gets brought up a couple times, and I told that I feel bad they get beat up, so to speak, in these presentations, but it really has nothing to do with staff. It's just a facilities issue, and this has been a really good graph to highlight how the structure of our buildings impact the budget. When you're talking about the FTE to student ratios, this becomes pretty obvious. Schools, when they were built, you know, in the 50s, 60s, they weren't operating under the same funding formulas as we're operating under now. And the efficiency mark for the ratios is really around what the school size is at Rankin and Edgerton on elementary side of the schools. And then you can see the programming side played out in these numbers between Glacier, Flathead, and then the LEC and the VOAG. Again, the LEC and the VOAG are intentionally designed to have a lower student number per staff FTE. The other thing that I'd just like to clarify on this is when we even talking about the word efficiency, I want it known that we're not talking about any sort of efficiency with instruction, and schools don't operate like a machine. We're relationship based, we're connecting human beings all day, so it's not as easy as just plugging in a formula and saying, this is how it's going to work, here's the ratio. You have some classes that are able to have 40 students, like a music class, And then you have other students that by design and the nature of the class are gonna be much smaller. So when we look at these numbers, we're looking at average numbers and a bigger picture with that school. I just wanna make that known, because our teachers are not, I don't want our schools to be viewed as, we have a group of teachers that are responsible and they're just managing. They're making personal connections to each individual kid in their classroom. And that gets lost sometimes in these numbers. Specifically with the elementary, this is what we're looking at. And these are hard numbers to come to reality with, but it's what they are. We're $1.6 million deficit. When the elementary tech levy passes, we're still looking at about a $500,000 deficit on the elementary side. On the high school side, ironically, we have about a $1.5 million deficit. When the levy request, the general levy request at the high school passes, we'll still have north of $550,000 deficit. And what we've talked about with the board is recognizing that when we say least impactful, we believe that these deficits can be right-sized over a series of years, and so we don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction. We're watching student population numbers, we're watching other areas of the budget, and we want to see them connect at a future date where we're not riffing staff and then responding to increases in enrollment and hiring staff back. So we don't have a crystal ball, we can't predict, but we're watching the indicators and trying to right-size it. To focus specifically on the elementary for a second, the tech levy is a renewal, and it's important in the levy campaign that we've been really pushing that to be clear with our taxpayers that we're just renewing the amount of mills that are currently being levied. And then on the elementary and the high school, we are not having any RIFs this year. So a RIF is a reduction in force. There is not one RIF between the elementary and the high school, and that's been an important message to share. There's been some disinformation shared in the community around RIFs, but it's been nice to be able to be in front of our staff specifically and share that's untrue. What we have done, though, is we've taken advantage of any sort of retirement and attrition savings. When you do the calculation, if you have somebody retire or leave a position and you choose not to fill that position, you have a staff member leaving this at the top of the salary matrix, and so you're taking full advantage of that salary by not replacing. That's one way to reduce the number of FTE without having a reduction in force from the bottom. The other part of that just makes common sense. If you're reducing staff from the bottom, you almost have to reduce 2 staff to come up with the same dollar amount of the attrition at the top. So this has primarily impacted Elrod and Russell. Elrod and Russell next year will go to 0.5 PE, 0.5 library, and 0.5 music. So in comparison, those schools have under 250 students at those schools. Rankin, Edgerton have twice the student number. Those schools have one full-time person in those positions. Elrod and Russell are also choosing to keep a full-time technology teacher, a full-time counselor, and a full-time instructional coach. Those are the other positions that could operate on a different ratio. So if you look at the overall staffing at Elrod and Russell compared to the staffing at our other elementary schools, they will still, if we backed up to that other chart, they would still be at a different ratio and the numbers would still be lower, meaning they have less students per teacher than those other sites. We are not cutting any programs at any of the other schools. So there's been some disinformation shared around us cutting music specifically at one of our elementary schools. That's not true. Music at that school will stay the same. Music at all the other elementary schools stays the same. This next projection is just to forecast in the future a little bit with our staff, and this helps explain when we're making these shifts. We're not talking about maxing classes out. And I think the number that we ran, the projection we ran was, if we're looking at 60% of what the demographer predicted with population growth, if we actually had 60% of that growth, how could we spread that out? We wanted to make sure we had a plan. what does this look like if those numbers actually materialize? And then the other part of it is, how do we manage the ratios to make sure that we find ourselves in a position where we have a stable budget? There's multiple ways to get there. If population grows, then you're probably keeping staffing the same, right? That's what we think is gonna happen, and then we just match it up with the student growth. There's some hypothetical scenarios here that would just play out, and the main reason for that is we're just watching the indicators of what would happen. The last bullet is speaking to if those ratios were in effect today, what that would mean to our budgets. So if we were in the formula that we're building going forward, we would have about $1.6 million in the elementary fund that's not there right now, which is our current deficit amount. The other important note, and I touched on it briefly, but I'm going to elaborate for a second, is when you see the ratio shift, it gets us up to, Chris, correct me here, but I think it was at 83%? 83% of accreditation standard. So if accreditation says you can have 25 kids in a class, that ratio brings you up to 83% of that student number. I think that's been welcomed by the staff. I hope it has, because when you start talking about those shifts and things getting tight, I think people picture worst case scenario and picture we're going to be filling our classes to the brim and all of that. That's not what we're projecting needs to happen to have a stable budget. And shifting gears here now, looking at the green numbers on the high school side, same story. There's not a RIF at the high school. We are taking advantage of some attrition, and the levy request for the high school is sitting at about $1.5 million deficit. There is a $1 per month per $300,000 general levy request. If that passes, then we'd only take advantage of the savings between a retired teacher and a new teacher for the positions we'd rehire. If that position, or if that levy does not pass, we're taking advantage of the attrition by not hiring back those positions, which is the larger dollar amount. Still leaves us in a negative projected budget for next year. Same conversation, and I think Flathead and KMS are in similar boats when we start looking at these high school projections looking forward. If we see an actual enrollment of 60% of what's been predicted, the big takeaway here for Flathead is that Flathead has more capacity on paper to take more students than Glacier. Glacier is already in a situation where they're traveling teachers, they're using their classrooms 7 out of 7 periods a lot of the time. Flathead's not in that situation. They have still those home-based classrooms. So when we see enrollment increases and we see where students can go to school, there's going to be more opportunity to have more students at Flathead. Similarly, KMS on paper has the capacity to add a couple hundred more students. If you talk to teachers at Flathead and if you talk to teachers at KMS, they're not going to say, yes, we have room for a couple hundred more students. But when we look at how Glacier is structured, for example, versus how those other schools are structured, there is the capacity to add enrollment, but it won't be equal. It won't be equal on geographical boundaries. And then we also talked about how the VOAG accommodates students during the day, but it really doesn't help enrollment numbers because those students come back to their respective high schools, and you have to set programming, you have to set scheduling based on the maximum number of students you have during a day. One of the bullet points, and something that I would advocate for, and we're exploring more and more, is a Center for Career Discovery. I think if you had a Center for Career Discovery that balanced the number of students that attend the VOAG, you had alternating schedules, then it kills two birds with one stone. You're serving a real practical need for where we're going programmatically, but then you're also providing a place for students to be physically that balances out, and you can see a reduction in actual students at the high school during the day, at the respective high schools. Those budget implications for what those ratios would be about $1.7 million is what we project there. And we just listed the big takeaways, just to make it really transparent and obvious of what we're talking about.
Will you go back to the last numbers for for a second? I just, so, I guess this was a little easier, I was kind of expecting this slide on the elementary, but with this one, it's still the idea that as more students enroll, our ratio would change at both schools, like it would
Yeah.
change in the high school district as well.
Yep.
Okay, so this is just enrollment changes, which we expect would happen, like, how long does it seem like it takes for these ratios to change projected? I know there's no crystal ball, but is there a general idea? Are we talking 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
We built this out 5 years. It's kind of what we're looking at as a 5-year number. Worked with A&E and how they had kind of built that in. Spent a lot of time actually digging into this detail. One thing I will say is last year would have been year one, or this year would have been year one based on the years before, and we saw actual increase in the high school numbers, but we have not seen actual increase on the elementary side. We have, and what they use when they do those demographer reports is they look at all the building permits, all the septic permits, all of the different indicators of housing, and then they put a per person and then a per student equation into the new construction. And we're seeing in the elementary district a lot of that, especially the high-density housing coming available right now with some of those apartment complexes opening. It's a little premature for us to say, well, we didn't see the growth in the last 3 years, so we're probably not going to see it going forward, because now is the opportunity for people to occupy those spaces. But on the high school district, we have seen the increases, and I think that historically in the last 5 years, it's been more affordable to build in some of those high school districts that are outside of Kalispell proper, and so that area has grown first. So I don't know. I'm kind of like everybody else in the valley, where I'm just watching to see, the development and who's moving in and how that's going. But as of today, we're not seeing increased numbers at the elementary, but we are at the high school.
And then I just have one more question. So is the current, the projected is to have the ratio with the 18.6 students to one teacher is the projected ratio in 5 years?
Yeah. Yep.
And so we're working with this like much less money per student in the high school district, but our ratios are still fairly okay, really, when it's like overall, what's the percentage of accreditation? Is that still at that like 86% for the high school district?
Yeah, that 83%. The challenge with the high school district is on the elementary side, we're close to 100% funded. And we have a $1.5 million or $1.6 million deficit. On the high school side, we have a $1.5 million deficit, but we're closer to 90% funded.
Right.
And so the challenge on the high school side is, as we see, if we saw continuation of unsuccessful levies that get us close to that 80%, something has to change. And for lack of a better description, this is kind of the canary in the coal mine, right? We're seeing that we can't balance the budget now with what the programs that we offer and the funds that we're able to receive from state and local funding sources. So something has to shift. Increased money from levies, which is the only mechanism we have as a school to increase our revenue. Increase student population. But as we see increased student population, we only capture the amount of funding as we've approved at that 90% of funding. So although increased enrollment does help us offset some costs, we're not able to capture the full cost of all of that. So, what really changes is programming, and it was nice because at Flathead we had some VOAG teachers in attendance when we spoke to the Flathead staff, and when we were at Glacier we had some of the LEC staff join that meeting, and there's probably a mix at both meetings, but it was nice to have them in the room to say, here's, we're not saying we're closing the VOAG and closing the LEC, but what we're talking about is a high school district not being in a position where we can run programs like we've historically run them. Next year will be the year when we're digging into what does this look like when we're seeing these indicators, whether levies are passing or not, and student enrollment. We can't just be blind to it. We need to plan ahead and figure it out.
I have one more quick question. So, these numbers, the ratio numbers, because we've talked a lot about like price per student that we are able to have, but we haven't talked a lot about the ratio in the high school district. the ratio that we have now includes the Ag Center and the LEC in it. How are Glacier and Flathead doing with their numbers of students per? Not coming? I'll be patient. No,
That's really what this one highlights, the, kind of in the middle there,
Okay.
third and fourth. That's where Glacier and Flathead sit currently.
Okay.
And then you have the LEC next to Elrod with the VOAG.
Yeah, I went
Next
from
up.
the left to the right.
Yep.
That's, I didn't,
Yep.
okay. Okay, great, thank you so much.
Yeah, good questions, I appreciate it. Yeah, Rebecca?
Oh, you didn't miss me. Thank you. I kind of had three questions and maybe the later ones all relate, so I'll start with the first. So you said 40 students works well for a music class, but not necessarily for other types of classes. I understand that might be true for performing in high school. Is it your view that that's just as an elementary non-performing but educational music class is very different than a high school or middle school as we run a class? What are your thoughts about the best for students, number of students in a elementary music class?
Well, just to clarify my comments, I'm not saying that music classes run well in the high school with 40 students. What I was trying to recognize is that different classes, different courses, historically have accommodated different numbers of students in classes. Specifically, like a high school choir or high school band will have more students than different sections. Maybe it's like a ceramics art class or something like that would have low numbers.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, but at the elementary level, I think that I would always advocate for the smaller the better. I think that the reality is that when we're seeing teachers make individual connections to students, the smaller class sizes are always better. Accreditation standards are generally set to ensure a ceiling, and I don't know if I would ever advocate that we are near the ceiling.
Cool. So the other thing is when you're showing us the comparison with other districts for elementary, I think that's really important. And I think it's really important that we remember that that is showing their priorities. And I think, as you said, it is okay if our priorities are different from other districts. And it's okay if we choose to spend our budget more on lower teacher-student ratios or other things that we prioritize. I'm a little, when you say KMS capacity could be larger, I think we need to be really clear that I think that's based on taking out some ways of doing business that some of which are dear to teachers, like perhaps teaming or perhaps even having each teacher having their own classroom, having their own space where it's their space. These are things we've heard from teachers of all levels, from Glacier, from KMS, that to them makes their job easier. So when we think about capacity, we also have to think about staff enjoyment of their jobs and of what our goals are and what are these things meeting our goals for both students and staff. And even blending into when you talk about a discovery center, I mean, our buildings already have an auto shop, already have built kitchens, already have some of the things that you might put into a discovery center. So how much are we like if we put auto shop in a discovery building, what do we actually gain space, or is that classroom space that's already built at Flathead pretty much only good for auto shop anyway? Yeah, I guess I just wanted to make sure we're clear on when we're comparing with other districts, those are their priorities, which don't have to match ours or aren't a rule or anything. And are we keeping, when we talk about what our capacity is, are we staying clear on our goals and that sort of thing?
I'm not sure exactly where the questions were in there, but I'll give it a stab. The first part that comes up is when we're talking about the comparison to other districts, you're right, and I'm glad you touched on that. We've never said that we're chasing any line. It's more of just an indicator of other schools are under the same funding mechanism as we are under. And so if we're looking at just as a dashboard indicator of where we're spending money compared to where other people are spending money, we just want to be aware of the facts of where we're spending money. But you're absolutely correct, and we have not proposed that we're chasing anything. It does help tell a story, though, specifically with maintenance. And I think that there's, a lot of frustration from administrators and staff in our facilities about facilities in our buildings. And, we underfund our facilities. If that's something we want to continue to do to continue to support other things, I think it helps the frustration when people are just know that that's part of the current reality. As far as the comments about the middle school, when we talk about capacity, we're only talking about a physical structural capacity that's done by the architects when they determine square footage and those types of spaces. The other issues with capacity that you mentioned that were more instructionally related did come up actually at the KMS staff meeting, and I appreciated one of the staff asking the question. I think specifically with teaming, they said, does this mean teaming goes away? And no, it doesn't mean teaming goes away. I think at the middle school, there's two things to talk about when you talk about teaming. The first one is how we group kids in a really big middle school. It's the largest middle school in the state of Montana. How we group kids into a family, right? If that's the purpose and idea of teaming. We're not the only school system that does that, but grouping kids into a family and keeping them in that family is teaming. The other side of teaming that came up was no, teaming actually means 2 prep periods, teaching 5 of 7, not teaching 6 of 7. That's a discussion that's actually being had at negotiations as well, because K-5 teachers do have 1 prep where middle school teachers have 2 preps. So if you're looking at an elementary budget that is a K-8 budget and how you're the equity in that from K to 8, it needs to be a conversation and get some resolve, and I trust in negotiations there'll be some sort of resolve on that issue. But it's also at the middle school not saying that you have to go, you need to change that, right? There's different ways to get there. There's different schedules. Bozeman last year, due to budget issues, explored a block schedule, and block schedule worked for them to do the same types of things with the student-to-teacher ratios, gave similar prep time, but was a mechanism that they did. I know other school districts have changed the number of periods in the day and maintained 2 prep periods. We're not there. We haven't had the discussion. It's one of those things, I think some rumors have gotten out ahead of reality, but that's some of the work we need to do next year to be prepared either way. And was there another one in there, Rebecca, or did I hit them all?
No, I guess you're right. I guess it wasn't so much a question as an invitation to pontificate. So thank you for your discussion.
I hope that was enough pontification.
Thank you, Rebecca.
And then we just try to close out that discussion with a reminder of, we really are trying to have the least negative impact. So my advocacy for this board is to call back some ESSER funds that I think wisely were put away under previous administration, where they could have been used like other districts use. Now, we're not facing an ESSER cliff like other districts are. Instead, we took ESSER funds, COVID money, and we put that aside for a purpose like this. I think it's responsible for. It's separate than the interlocal agreement. Just to be clear, I think we've about double overcommitted our interlocal agreement. That's a different conversation. But specifically with those funds, this could help ease that transition, and so we're more in tune with population growth. All right, shifting gears here with the levy.
Wait, can we go back just really quick?
Yeah.
I just, not really a question, but kind of a clarification. If you'll go back to the slide that talks about music in the elementary schools. You said that you're gonna decrease the FTE for PE, library, and music at Elrod and Russell to the 0.5 instead of 1, and that you're making, you're not removing music programs from any other school, but I just want
the clarification to be that you're not removing it from Russell and Elrod either, just the FTE is changing. I just to be
Yeah.
clear.
Great clarifying comment. Big takeaways on the elementary tech levy is what's in orange below. It's a renewal. What we use technology for is safety, communication, and learning. You can see those subpoints. And then the trickier conversation with the elementary tech levy is if it's not approved, it really shifts a lot of the technology expenses to the general fund, which will lead to more strain on the general fund and other things being cut from the general fund. 90% of our general fund is spent on staffing. So, we're out of paper clips and pencils to cut. It really does go back to staffing and programs. I just keep going, Pete. Stop it. There you go. These are the numbers that are associated with the elementary tech levy. You see them before because they're currently happening. And shifting to the high school, the request is $1 per month per 300,000. And this was an effort to just maintain where we are. So we're maintaining based on the new students we have, plus keeping up with inflation. We'd be able to keep the current levels of staffing without any taking advantage of any attrition. If not approved, then we'd be looking at multiple high school teachers being not approved or being positions not being filled. Again, no refs this year. These are the specific numbers, that $1 increase per month, $12.04 a year. And then this graph, it looks a little different in some of the levy campaign stuff that's going out there, but this was one we shared with our staff. And the red graph is where we are now. So we looked at the other AA districts and said, what is their general fund revenue per enrolled student? And we put ourselves there, and you can see we are there because we're 90% funded. So when people say, gosh, what's going on in Montana? We can't pass levies. Montana's doing okay passing levies. We are not doing okay not passing levies. And so this is not a statewide problem as much as it is a Kalispell problem. That red number, if you see the pink above it, that's the levy request that's on the ballot this spring. So the message is not a money grab. This is a pretty reasonable increase. We would still be pretty significantly the least funded AA district in the state of Montana on a per student basis. The next graph over represents what if we were fully funded? When we get there, and we're able to articulate the great things that are happening in our schools and the worthiness of our programs, what will it look like? It still pushes us over between Great Falls and Bozeman. The detail here, I'm not prepared to speak about. Chris would have to take over for about 45 minutes to tell you about, why different districts have different maximum budgets per student. But in a nutshell, it has to do with the funding that you get per teacher and then your percentage of base allocation based on your tax base. So there's different things inside that funding formula that we would never, as a district, well, at least how things are written now, we would not move further than that 84 number. So it'd slide us between Great Falls and Bozeman. And then just a good reminder, when we're talking about levies, there's some do's and don'ts. We want to make sure our staff is aware of those issues when they're talking about it. Our main point is to have people be informed. So we're trying to get the messaging out and reach different groups of people in our community and make sure that they're informed. We're taking on a few radio ads because we know that there's a whole group of people that are outside of parents that we need to connect with, and so we're hoping we can cast a little bit bigger net with the radio. We're going to try some movie theater ads. We have the traditional flyer and yard signs and things like that, and then we'll have some. We've had and we'll continue to have some information that goes out to our parents and community that we do have emails for. All right, that's it. It's been fun. Tomorrow will be the last stop at Rankin when our staff gets together for their wheel training. Of course, you are all welcome to attend. A couple of the board members have attended some of these meetings, and it's always appreciated, but not required.
Any other questions? A lot of information. Okay, up next, public comment. Do I have anybody here for public comment? One? Okay. At this time, the board will allow comment on public matters that are not on the main agenda. Members of the audience are encouraged to briefly address the trustees on an issue that's not on the agenda. Chair of the board will seek comments from the audience on significant items as they occur. Public matters do not include any pending legal matters, private personnel issues, or private student issues. Please do not attempt to address such issues at this time, or you'll be ruled out of order. Please note that individuals will be given 3 minutes for public comment. I've got one more additional to this tonight. Just in case if anybody here is in attendance to make public comments regarding staff reassignments for 2024-25 school year, for policy 5210, reassignments are not on the agenda item, so now would be your time to talk about this. Likewise, if you have other personnel concerns not included on the personnel action item list, this would also be your opportunity to make public comment. Okay? Reynolds, you're up first.
Hi, Reynolds Cameron, parent at Hedges, and before all this stuff that kind of took us all by surprise happened, several parents and their children were prepared to come tonight to speak about She Who Shall Not Be Named. But anyway, the big takeaway is 2 or 3 weeks ago, this person led all the Hedges fifth graders for the honors choir, as well as some of the other schools, and people that weren't from Hedges had actually said the Hedges group was really amazing, and we thank She Who Shall Not Be Named for that. I've offered to provide her with references, my understanding, especially about all the issues that the district needs to raise money. I think an important thing is being forthright with the community, and so if, let's say there was a teacher who molested children or did something really terrible, hopefully the district would say, hey, families, there might be rumors. So anyway, the police are handling this. And I hope that would be something we would have a two-way communication. My understanding is that was definitely not the case in anything that's gone on recently. But I hope also that if there's the desire to have less teachers, that they won't be blackballed and told, hey, you know, if you don't resign, we're going to say, yeah, I wouldn't recommend her to the next school. So, and if it's not that, then that seems like it would be a RIF or a reduction in force. So if there has been a reduction in force, let's call a spade and tell the community our funding is in such a bad condition, we're starting to have to lay off teachers. And so if that's what's going on, anyway. And then to finish up, I'd like to iterate how much the music program meant to, especially Hedges, which has, I think, a disproportionate amount of special needs students. And this, during the drum and xylophone performance, was probably a 12, 15-minute musical piece where every single student, the most behaviorally challenged and other students, hit every single note, like the pause, don't play a note, they were all in sync, and it was really amazing. So please keep funding music, and let's work through the levies and other issues that we've got to deal with. Thanks.
Thank you. Has anybody else want to make public comment? Welcome. Come on.
Good evening. My name is Xi Zhao. We have, so I'm with Reynolds is my husband, and we have 3 beautiful children enrolled in Hedges Elementary School. So just to follow up the comments from Rennie, so I'd like to support or to show my appreciation to, well, Ms. Gorgas. We really appreciate the past 2 years she's with our kids, with the class. I think, you know, it's very evident the music performance that they put up. As parents, we really appreciate that, and not to mention the wonderful performance that she led the kids for the honor choir. I think although all the kids did wonderful, I have to stress that I think to us, I think it's quite evident, the Hedges students well-dressed and well-behaved, and yeah, again, kudos to the kids, and obviously, without her passion and dedication, that wouldn't happen. I think, you know, we do have YouTube videos to back up what we're saying here. It's wonderful to revisit that video. You know, but what a loss. I just want to say thanks for her time there, and we appreciate it. And last point, I do want to share from my sort of personal experiences for someone who also first-hand experienced corporate layoff. I do think this is kind of a precious time for us to really show courtesy and humanity in a way to support who being impacted. You know, for all of you guys, for us who, you know, if we have privilege to have a position to support her case, for her to land to next career position, I think that kind of support would really highly appreciate it. And for us, from parent perspective, yeah, we definitely love to be that reference point of, you know, contact if you ever need support, sort of evidence. We're here to you know, do anything that helpful in any case. With that, thanks again for her time, and yes, we appreciate her and we'll miss her. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else for public comment? Okay, seeing none. Okay, up next, personnel action items. Liz? Routine?
It's lengthy today because we haven't had a board meeting for quite a while.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, I'm here.
Anybody willing to make a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Lance. Have a second? Thank you, Sue. It's been moved and seconded. Does anybody have any discussion on this? Seeing none. Any public comment? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Rebecca, how do you vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next. Non-renewal. Liz?
Yeah, they might talk about B and C at the same time, and then these are one-year only contracts, so this is an expectation. Also noted on the attachments are people who have stepped out for a year who have returned their letters of return for the 24-25.
So the first one, we're looking for a motion to approve the one-year only non-renewals for 23-24 elementary only.
I move to approve.
Thank you, Jennifer. Seconded. Thank you, Ursula. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I was just gonna say that I appreciate there's some like informational things coming out about some of these personnel action items, and I just really appreciate how it's been clarified over and over again to keep us updated so that we can take these motions confidently in the moment.
Thank you. Okay. Any further discussion? None. Any public comment? None. Elementary only. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Rebecca, how do you vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Next, non-renewal high school. Liz? Nothing? Did it, right? Pretty much. Okay. Anybody willing to make a motion? So moved. Thank you. Ursula, do I have a second? A second? Thank you, Jennifer. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this? Seeing none. Any public comment? Seeing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Rebecca, how do you vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, first business items. contract for the superintendent. So we all know Matt has graciously stepped in. We're on week 2. Running the district. It's been a busy week. It's gonna be a busy week here on out. This was just to make everything official. Was everybody able to review the contract? I want to thank Jack and Scott for working on this. They did a great job. Any questions? Anybody willing to make a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ursula. Do I have a second? Thank you, Sue. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this? Seeing none. Any public comment on this? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Rebecca, how do you vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. This will be Chris, but I have a comment on this first. I'm not sure who I've spoken to with everything going on. I will not be running this next election cycle, and that's what this is about. So with Linda, there is nobody in opposition, so this will be her position next year, or this upcoming next couple months. Same with Mark. We're welcoming Mark back. He's going to be filling in for the remainder of Lloyd's term. And this is basically what this is about, of canceling this portion of the election. Chris, do you have anything else?
Yeah, just, so, I mean, I think everybody's aware, but Mark's term will just be a one term because that was the term remaining in Lloyd's term. So sorry, just one time. And then, Linda will be the 3 years, just like normal. For those who don't know, Linda, she, I believe, is a retired counselor from Columbia Falls Public Schools and also the founder of Governance here locally. And that's we'll see them at, with their elementary trustees, swear them on all together at the meeting following the May 7th election.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have a motion to approve the cancellation of the high school trustee elections as presented?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Jennifer. Do I have a second? Thank you, Sue. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Rebecca, how do you vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Up next, health insurance premiums. Liz?
This is what came out of our insurance committee recommendation board, and then was brought to finance on the 5th. If you are looking at 10% increase for medical and a 5% increase in dental, and then a 48.2% increase in vision, which is not a typo. That one, so in July, I took notes on this. So in July of 22, we changed to Allegiant for a vision plan. And so after the 2 years of seeing the rates and people increase on our plan, actually, the two right sides what we're offering. This does include an eye exam plus $350 towards your lenses. So this is just to make it a sustainable program. We don't expect to see an increase of this size anytime soon. We just needed to feel out the plan and see where we were at. Any additions?
No, well, yeah, the total cost, we won't know for sure until we complete open enrollment, but it's approximately an increase of $570,000 from last year on the district side. We are working, part of what we're looking to do long-term is create stability in our financial situation regarding insurance. We still are operating in a deficit, and per the guidance of our consultants, a reserve balance of approximately $3 million is kind of the target of where we should have. Because a bad year can move the needle on us north or south of $1 million. Like currently, we don't have any money in our insurance funds. A bad year sending us $1 million further into the hole, especially when we're running budget deficit, is exceptionally challenging. So establishing that reserve balance is really important. If the numbers materialize as projected, that'll get us about 1/6 of the way to that reserve balance that we need to get to. So there's a lot of heavy lifting to do in front of us, that's why. We'll, I think at the same time, be exploring all the options with the state pool that they're looking to form and, kind of options that private insurance would provide as well.
I've said this before, but neither the people that are on the insurance committee are here. I will just say it again, that these increases in insurance are kind of expected. In meetings, the numbers that the cost of healthcare goes up, not matched with any of the other costs that we are trying to deal with, more and more expensive. And I haven't been on the committee this year, but the things the district is doing do seem to be keeping it as affordable as possible. These numbers aren't a result of mismanagement. Healthcare costs are expected, they're predicted to just increase so much. The numbers that they just put out for the percentages, obviously vision higher, but are below what the person who advises the committee tells us to be prepared for. And so, the district is doing everything they can to keep it as affordable as possible, but healthcare costs are just one of those crazy things that I think we have to expect to be way bigger than we can really wrap our heads around every year.
Thank you.
One thing the insurance committee did note, and did when Chris was talking about sustainability and coming on the right side of our deficit, what we're proposing and have brought to you would create a $550,000-ish entry into the positive each year if everything stayed the exact same. It's over $500,000. This isn't just to get us back to zero, which is kind of what the insurance committee was presented has been our little increases year after year we've done. So this is the insurance committee's nod to acknowledging our shortfall.
Do we have a motion to approve the health insurance premiums as presented? So moved. Thank you, Ursula. Second?
I second it.
Thank you, Mark. Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none? Any public comment on this? Reynolds?
As health, okay. As healthcare expenses so importantly tie into district finances, I think as communicating, if there's a website or something with more full details to include this, and so people can understand, hey, our retirees are actually part of the general fund. I don't know which fund or whatever, but, and then that ties back into, I hope, when you're deciding to get rid of older teachers and hire new ones, that you're factoring in recruitment costs, healthcare, and to what extent Medicare covers it versus private insurance, supplemental type. But I know it's very complicated, and good job.
Thank you. Any other public comment? None? All in favor, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Rebecca, how do you vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Up next, policy update, third and final reading.
So third and final reading, no changes from what you've seen twice now already. Remember, this is in response to House Bill 203, and this has been worked out with Superintendent Klein, Chris Campbell, and myself. And the next step of this would be building the appropriate forms and procedures that would policy after passage.
I move to approve. Thank you, Jennifer. Have a second? I'll second. Thank you, Sue. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? None? Any public comment?
I had a comment or question.
Yes, Rebecca?
We had talked about what the date for the non-discretionary, non-resident students attendance would be. Do we want to talk about how we arrived at it, why we chose that, or do we all feel that we're all good on it?
Yeah, the decision that we ended up going with was to not set any date for, enrollment deadlines or cutoffs. The kind of the reason behind it is really primarily the best interest of the student. So even if we had a student come in March, that would be an enroll in March that lives, say, in Lakeside, but wants to come to Kalispell Public Schools. We would not receive funding for that student because the count day is in February. However, that student would have to then enroll in Lakeside, and then if they were still planning to come to Kalispell, transition schools again at the end of that school year. So bigger picture, in the best interest of the student, it's continuity of education that kind of drove that decision. And as well, from a financial point of view, it's unlikely that once a student did enroll, say, in a Lakeside school, that they would end up transitioning up to Kalispell the next year. So both ways, it seemed like the best decision in just the student and financially.
I would say that, just add, the one date you do see is a re-enrollment date, and that re-enrollment date aligns with our current procedures for re-enrollment of out-of-neighborhood and out-of-district students, to make sure that when we're planning for the following year, that's in alignment with other variables. Also, this was a long-winded discussion with area superintendents about the date, and Chris actually led a discussion with some other business managers in the area to put together some internal mechanisms to track students so that it allowed us the flexibility to be able to make the more personal decisions that Chris was referencing. So we're thankful that we've automated the process a little bit so it's not as cumbersome on all the business managers.
Okay, Rebecca, was that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I just thought we want to chat about it. Great chat.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks. Okay, been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Rebecca, how do you vote?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Consent agenda, elementary only. A few things on here. Did everybody get a chance to look through everything? Okay. Willing to make a motion?
I'd move to approve consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Lance. Second? Second. Thank you, Sue. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? None. Any public comment? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Rebecca, how do you vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Say elementary. Sorry. Okay. Consent agenda, district-wide. Did everybody look through all of these items? Anybody willing to make a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Lance. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mark. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? None? Any public comment? None? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Rebecca, how do you vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, stipend committee requests. Back up one piece. Is it? Is it all lumped?
It was a cell.
He just had it on there. Someone had questions.
Mhm.
He added their.
Are you who did this?
It says action. Was that under all one consent agenda, or are they two? Well, it says act, I thought it was two.
I could be wrong. Yeah.
Okay, so it was all lumped. Okay,
At the finance committee, we kind of thought that would be fine.
okay,
Pretty minimal amount, and it's, well vetted by the stepping committee. Felt it was up to.
all right.
It is an accident.
And that's why we're asking, do we need another motion for that?
Yep.
Okay, back it up. We're back on stipend requests.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Were there any parts of the committee's meeting this time that were contentious? Did everybody seem to kind of agree on what was and wasn't approved?
Yes. It it was not contentious. Good discussion amongst second committee, how everything got approved. Process is working.
Any other questions? No, seeing none. Do I have a motion to approve the stipend request as presented?
Approve the stipend request as presented.
Thank you, Sue. I feel like we have crickets here tonight. Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any public comment? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Rebecca, how do you vote?
I,
Any
Out
opposed?
of practice.
Motion passes. Okay, trustee reports. Rebecca, how about you start us off?
I actually have nothing to report this week.
Okay. Lance?
No report.
Okay. Mark?
No real report.
Okay. Sue?
I have a couple of things, but first of all, I want to say thank you to Heather for chairing this year. I know how difficult that job is, and I can totally be sympathetic towards, you not running again. But, I also wanted to say that I attended the budget meeting here at Flathead that I know Heather did too. And I just want to say that, the reason I came, I was very curious about the staff reaction to the presentation. I mean, we all hear a lot of different stories, and it went, I thought, very well, and I didn't realize it, but it was their staff meeting afterwards, which I just hung around for, you know, just for old time's sake. But it was pretty interesting to listen to some of the reaction, because it was very positive. I thought there were some good questions. One of them that I had to follow up on was whether or not we could ever do an in-person election, you know, which I hadn't even thought about. And so I had to do some research on that. Yes, you can, but you get an even lower turnout for that than the mail-in one. So, you know, I wouldn't ever recommend that. I also wanted to say, and I know Matt sent out a notice on this, we went to the Government Affairs Committee meeting for the Chamber, and Matt presented a version of this budget presentation on the levy. I think he got through 2 slides because there were so many questions about it, but ultimately, they brought it to their full board, and they are endorsing the passing of the levy once again. So if you get a chance to see any of them, please, please, please thank them for it. I also wanted to mention that MTSBA directors met in Whitefish a couple of weeks ago, and it was a strategic planning meeting, and there were 2 big things that came out of that. The first one is funding issues, and we have a couple of resolutions that we'll be bringing to the legislative session this time around. And they will go through many different versions at that time, but that was a big theme. You know, we all see how complicated it can be, and so there are some issues that we hope to iron out. The other interesting theme that came out through that was public relations, the communication piece. And so I think you will see some work from MTSBA promoting schools across the state, from the, you know, AA's to the C's. You know, that's just a priority. So I think that is an important thing. So that's what I had.
Thank you, Sue. Jennifer?
So I've talked about it before, that I'm on this B5 group, working on transitions. And we had a really great PLC, Professional Learning Community Night. Marissa was there. She hosted it at Rankin. We had some, early childhood teachers, so pre-K, and then we had some district teachers, both kindergarten and the early childhood, educators from the district. come to a room together, and we looked at some old transition documents that we had made pre-COVID and kind of talked through the struggles that they're seeing at the schools, the struggles that they're seeing at the preschool level, and then talking a little bit about HB 352 and what that's going to look like for the districts next year and how it's going to impact childcare going into the year. It was really great. All the people in the room were like, we need to do this more often, which is really what we've been saying for a long time, is that we're just kind of missing with pre-K and kindergarten, like as soon as they get to the school district, we're missing some communication. So really working through that and getting people together more often to talk about the same things, because it's all in the interest of children, the best interest of children. So anyway, that was really great. We're gonna have another meeting next week to kind of regroup, talk about what we talked about at that meeting. It was really funny that some of the things that came up in that meeting were like, things like, do kids know how to unbuckle their seatbelt and get out of the car by themselves? So we're not like holding up lines. So kind of things like that that you just don't really even think about. And then having like,
Why at Rankin specifically.
yeah, at Rankin specifically. And then we are hosting a parent information night. So it's really open for all parents going into any school district. If they have questions about that, if they have questions about the ELA stuff that's happening, if they have questions about what the assessments are going to look like. And that's April 30th, and that will be at the Growing Roots Childcare that's in the Northridge Lutheran Church. So we're really excited for that. I think there's some really good movement in this direction, and as there's changes across the state, like access to services is a big thing that's going to be happening this year. I think it's really important that we all really work together for these little kids, because they need it, and the families need a lot of support.
Great. Thank you. Ursula?
The District Music Festival is happening this week, Friday, Saturday, and I just put it out there. It's a really easy way to see lots of music from, all of the different departments in both of the high schools. So if you have any time Friday night, Saturday, you can just go into Glacier and go into the main performing arts room, and something will probably be happening. Or you can sneak into a classroom and watch a solo. It's all very casual, very easy, and very cool to see. And then the other thing I was going to say is I just met them at trivia, but I met a board member from one of our partner districts, one of our high school partner districts, and just in the little moment that we were able to chat, it did really bring that thing that we've talked about over and over again about how important it is to talk to these neighboring districts. Made it so obvious because we are dealing with all the same things. They have a really low budget they're going into. They have a really young board, kind of trying to figure it out as they go. And we spend all of these hours here, and it's like, well, I know my spouse doesn't want to hear about it anymore, but they do. They want to talk about it. And so I just think any opportunities that we have to talk with those partner districts, I think it can't hurt. I think it's the only help thing. We're all kind of dealing with these same issues more here in the Valley. It was really evident in these pictures, more in the Valley and in the rest of the state. These are the other people that kind of know what we're dealing with. So I hope that we can do more of that in the coming years.
I'm just gonna piggyback on.
And if I can add on to Ursula, they also need volunteers all the time at District Music Festival. So as well as going and listening to all the wonderful things, you can always go and help out.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah.
I'm just gonna piggyback on
Actually,
what.
if I did.
I'm done. The school tour at Russell, thank you, was amazing today. We went into 4 different classrooms. We're greeted by students at each classroom, and the part that really stuck out to me was that the teacher never stopped teaching, and the students, normally when we've gone into classrooms, especially elementary classrooms, it turns into chaos, and it didn't there. We had 2 to 3 students that led us around and showed us the different things that they were doing. stuff that they're doing is just amazing. Them be able to explain what they're doing, how they're learning, how they track what they're learning. Kudos to PCBE and everything that our principals are doing. Keep up the good work. It's really showing what you guys are doing.
And Michelle, she runs a tight ship there.
Hey, Matt?
Not too much report, but a couple shout outs. We've had a lot of these budget conversations and things. I just want you guys to know, behind the scenes, there's still a lot of conversation happening between the business department and the HR department of just tightening things up and getting more clarity. So, a lot of work going on, but a lot of really good organization and structure that I'm excited to be a part of and to see how that rolls out and how we can communicate that with the board and teachers going forward. At the building level, this is a really fun and challenging time of year. Principals are still working really hard on trying to get through the goals that they had for the year. It's also the time when we start looking at staffing and the things that, all the balls that become up in the air with that. And then today at Russell was a good reminder of all of the extra work that we're taking on as a district to improve and make even better the teaching and learning that we're doing. All of the regular things that happen don't go away when you take on something new. So today we're at Russell, you still have sick kids, you still have, other issues going on in a building, and so the staff is just doing an amazing job of managing the day-to-day normal operation and then leaning into becoming even better versions. And then our principals this year have been tagged probably definitely more than I've seen in the 3 years I've been here, but I think probably more than they've had in their history of being asked to take on special assignments. We've been digging into special task force groups. They've been participating in all sorts of different subcommittees. It's a negotiation year, so that pulls. So just recognition that they're investing a lot of time into bigger, broader district things going on. We're in the middle of a couple important hiring processes. Some of you are on those committees, and I appreciate your participation in that. You're always a welcome addition. We'll have the assistant superintendent, the middle school principal, and the activities director positions going through those processes in the next couple of weeks. And then just to add to what Sue said, I've been able to start meeting with the other AA superintendents and be brought up to speed on some statewide conversations around insurance pool, what the prospect of that is playing out. We're watching that really closely because that could be a big benefit to our district. And then also just the state funding formulas and advocacy around right sizing and updating some of the things that are going on specifically in Bozeman, Missoula, Kalispell, where we're strained a little bit more on housing and cost of living expenses compared to other parts in the state, and some interesting proposals that have come from the Bozeman School Board to address that. That was in a link that I sent you. If you have not had an opportunity to read that, I understand, but if you could make time for that, I think it'd be a good read.
Matt? Pete?
Everything.
He's quiet tonight. Chris?
Good.
Okay. Well, good. That was. Liz?
Can I add in one comment, or did I miss my moment?
Well, I gave you first opportunity. And Scott. Would you like to add one thing?
I would. I just wanted to say that with the letters of support we've gotten for Bryce Wilson, I just wanted to I realized what a gem we have and how lucky we are. And so I just wanted to honor and recognize how lucky we are in all our staff on what a good job they do.
Thank you, Rebecca. Take a look at our upcoming meetings. I know we had to bump around communications. It was supposed to be on Monday, but it will be tomorrow if anybody would like to attend, 9 a.m. Correct? Okay. Other than that, I think that's all we have for tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Ursula. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Unofficially, we have our blue ribbon event on Thursday evening from 3